Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hi, I'm Oliver.
And hi, I'm Lily.
Welcome to Science in Easy English.
Why is yawning contagious?
So, think about this for a second. Before you were even born, like
Yeah.
at 12 weeks old, just floating around in a fluid-filled amniotic sac, totally unable to breathe air, you were actually already yawning.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy to picture.
It is.
Yeah.
And, you do it every single day, probably multiple times a day. But if you walk up to almost anyone on the street and ask them why we yawn, they will give you an answer that is, well, entirely 100% scientifically false.
Right, they totally will.
So today, for this deep dive, we are pulling from some really fascinating sources. We've got behavioral biology studies out of Johns Hopkins, functional MRI scans, and literally decades of animal data.
All to decode, basically, one of your most unstoppable daily reflexes.
Exactly. We're going to figure out why you actually yawn,
Yeah.
why seeing someone else do it is just so wildly contagious, and what that actually reveals about the hidden connections in the human brain.
It's just wild how universally misunderstood this reflex is. I mean, the standard belief, the one we've pretty much all been taught since childhood, is that yawning is just your body's way of getting this massive dose of oxygen to the brain.
Right. Or like expelling a buildup of carbon dioxide or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, it feels completely intuitive, right? You take this massive deep breath, your chest expands, so you naturally think, okay, it has to be a respiratory reflex.
But that 12-week-old fetus you mentioned completely shatters that idea.
Totally. Because the fetus isn't taking in a giant gulp of ambient oxygen. It's submerged in fluid.
Right, so the oxygen theory just immediately hits a brick wall, and science has actually known this for decades.
Wait, really? Decades?
Oh, yeah. Back in the late 1980s, researchers actually put the whole oxygen theory through a really rigorous test. They brought volunteers into a lab, fitted them with these breathing masks, and just systematically played with the dials.
Okay, so they were changing what the people were breathing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They pumped in higher concentrations of carbon dioxide, and then they switched it up to pump in, like, pure, highly concentrated oxygen.
So if the intuitive theory was right, hitting them with pure oxygen should have completely cured any urge to yawn.
That's what you would expect, but it did absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
Zero effect on their yawning frequency. I mean, the changes in gas concentration definitely affected their breathing rates, like they would breathe faster or deeper to compensate, but it had zero impact on whether or not they yawned.
Wow.
Yeah, getting more oxygen simply does not make you yawn less.
Which, leaves us with a massive biological mystery here. If my body isn't gasping for air, what is it actually trying to do when it forces my jaw open like that?
Well, it's trying to cool your brain down.
Okay, a brain cooler.
Yeah, this is the thermoregulatory theory. It was pioneered by evolutionary biologists, specifically someone named Andrew Gallup. And at its core, the theory states that yawning is essentially a highly specialized, built-in biological radiator.
I really love that analogy. It's like, think about your head like a high-performance car engine, or a really powerful computer processor.
Exactly.
When you run a process so hard, it generates metabolic heat. And if it gets too hot, the whole system starts lagging, so it desperately needs a cooling mechanism to keep running efficiently.
That is exactly what is happening inside your skull. And the sheer mechanics of how a yawn actually achieves this are brilliant.
How so?
Well, when you yawn, you don't just open your mouth. There is this massive, powerful stretching of your jaw muscles. And that physical stretching acts like a pump.
Ooh, pushing blood around.
Right. It forces a surge of blood flow into your neck, face, and head.
So you're basically revving the coolant pump.
Exactly. And at the exact same time, you take that deep, sustained inhalation of ambient air. That rush of air acts as the coolant. It rapidly chills the venous blood draining out of your nasal and oral cavities.
So it cools the blood right there in your face.
Yeah. And then that newly chilled blood interfaces with the warmer blood that's heading up to your brain, effectively lowering the brain's overall temperature through convective heat exchange.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
It's basically like taking a sip of ice water on a scorching day,
Mm.
but you're using air. You're flushing out the hot coolant and pulling in the cold.
Exactly.
And researchers have actually watched this happen in real time, haven't they?
They have. There was this fascinating study involving rats where they wanted to track the exact temperature changes in the brain during a yawn.
Okay.
So they actually inserted microscopic, highly sensitive thermometers, thermocouples, directly into the rat's prelimbic cortex.
Wait, which is just a specific area near the front of the rat's brain, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the specific region matters a lot less than the fact that they were measuring direct brain tissue temperature.
Right, getting the actual data.
And they observed that the rat's brain temperature would steadily rise, getting hotter and hotter. Then, the very moment the brain hit a peak temperature, the rat would yawn.
Just automatically.
Yep. And immediately following the yawn, the brain temperature would plummet rapidly, dropping by up to 0.5 degree Celsius.
Wow.
And then it would return to a normal baseline within minutes.
You know, 0.5 degree might sound tiny to us, but for a super delicate organ like a brain, that is a massive, incredibly rapid thermal shift.
Oh, absolutely.
But wait, for that radiator analogy to hold up out in the real world, the air outside your face has to be colder than the blood inside your head.
That's true.
Because if the ambient air is hot, sucking it in wouldn't help at all.
Which perfectly explains this other study, the thermal window study that they conducted in Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, I read about this one. It's great.
It is one of my favorite pieces of observational data because it takes the lab science and puts it out onto the sidewalk. Researchers essentially ambushed pedestrians walking outside during 2 very different seasons.
Right, because Tucson is basically perfect for this. In the winter, the ambient outside temperature is around 22 degrees Celsius, which is, a very pleasant room temperature. But in the summer, it hits a blistering 37 degrees Celsius, which is exactly human body temperature.
So in the summer, breathing in the outside air is literally like blowing hairdryer on a hot engine. It provides 0 convective cooling.
And what did the study find?
The results were incredibly clear. Pedestrians walking around in the 22-degree winter yawned almost twice as much as the people walking around in the 37-degree summer.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Because when it's 37 degrees outside, the brain's internal thermostat realizes that yawning is just useless.
Exactly. The ambient air can't cool the brain down, so the yawning reflex basically shuts off. And your body has to rely on other, more desperate cooling systems.
Like sweating.
Precisely. It proves that yawning only operates within a specific thermal window. And understanding this mechanism actually gives you a very strange but highly effective physiological hack.
Oh. You tip.
If you ever feel a yawn coming on and you absolutely need to stop it, you can just hold an ice pack to your forehead or force yourself to breathe rapidly and exclusively through your nose.
Okay, I would look completely unhinged doing that in a boardroom. But mechanically, that makes total sense.
Right.
Because if I breathe strictly through my nose, I'm funneling cool air directly into the nasal cavity, which sits right beneath the brain's frontal lobe.
Exactly. The brain's internal thermostat registers the drop in temperature from the nasal breathing or from the ice pack, and it realizes the processor is already cooled. So it completely deactivates the biological trigger for the yawn.
Okay, but this raises a huge contradiction for me.
What's that?
If yawning is fundamentally just a personal air conditioning unit for the brain, why does it exclusively seem to happen when we are bored out of our minds? Or just dead tired?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Like, when I am sitting through a dull 3-hour PowerPoint presentation, my brain does not feel like it's running hot. It feels completely shut down.
Well, it might feel shut down, but physiologically, fatigue actually causes your brain's temperature to peak. Yeah. As your circadian rhythm prepares you for sleep in the evening, your brain temperature reaches its highest point of the day. And boredom plays a huge role here, too.
How so?
When you are bored staring at that PowerPoint, your brain activity drops into what neurologists call the default mode network.
The daydreaming mode. Like you're completely zoned out, not really processing anything.
Exactly. The yawn is actually your body aggressively fighting back against that zoned out state.
Oh, wow.
There's a medical researcher, Dr. Olivier Walusinski, who proposes that yawning causes an arousal shift.
An arousal shift.
Yeah. The physical muscular exertion of the yawn doesn't just cool the brain, it massively increases the circulation of cerebrospinal fluid.
Oh, I see.
It literally jolts your brain out of that sluggish default mode and forces it into an active, attentive state.
So wait, yawning in the middle of a meeting is not a sign of disrespect. It's actually my brain desperately trying to cool its processors and flush its fluid so I can pay more attention to the speaker.
You can absolutely use that excuse next time.
I totally will.
It really highlights that yawning is an active defense against falling asleep. It is your biology struggling to keep you awake and vigilant.
Like, I'm not bored, I'm just violently optimizing my cognitive hardware.
Exactly.
And speaking of hardware, there's a really fascinating link in the research between how long a yawn lasts and the actual physical size of the brain doing the yawning.
Yes, there is a direct correlation across species. The duration of an animal's yawn correlates tightly with the number of cortical neurons it has.
Meaning the more densely packed the brain is with neurons, the longer the yawn.
Right. So mammals and birds with highly complex brains, like humans or primates, have significantly longer, more sustained yawns compared to, say, a mouse.
Because a highly complex neuron-dense processor generates way more metabolic heat.
Exactly. It requires a much more sustained rush of blood flow and a longer intake of ambient air to effectively drop its temperature.
Which, completely reframes how we look at abnormal yawning in medicine.
It really does.
The sources in our deep dive note that excessive yawning, and we're talking extreme cases here, sometimes up to 100 times a day, isn't just a sign of severe sleep deprivation. It's actually a huge medical red flag.
It is, because it's often a symptom of underlying conditions that cause severe thermoregulatory dysfunction.
Like what kind of conditions?
Things like multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, stroke, or even severe migraines. All of these can cause abnormal, dangerous spikes in core brain temperature.
So the body just starts firing off yawns, one after another, in a desperate, panicked attempt to dump that excess heat.
Precisely. We also see this as a side effect of certain antidepressants, specifically SSRIs.
Wait, how does an antidepressant cause yawning?
Well, SSRIs affect serotonin levels, and serotonin plays a major role in the hypothalamus.
Which is the temperature control center. Right?
Yeah, exactly. The hypothalamus is essentially a tiny cluster of cells at the base of your brain that acts as your body's central thermostat. So when certain drugs inadvertently tweak that thermostat, it can trick the brain into thinking it's overheating.
Oh, triggering a chain reaction of yawning.
Yeah.
So the yawn is just a symptom of a confused thermostat, not the disease itself.
Right.
Okay, but this brings you to my biggest question. If yawning is just a biological cooling mechanism like a personal AC unit to keep our cortical neurons from melting down, why in the world is it contagious? Because if I am sitting next to you and I see you shiver because you're cold, my body doesn't automatically start shivering.
That's true.
So why does seeing you cool your brain trigger my brain to cool itself?
That is the million-dollar question. And to answer it, we really have to look past basic physiology and into evolutionary biology.
Okay, let's go there.
Contagious yawning is what evolutionary biologists call a derived social feature.
What does that mean?
Essentially, it's a behavioral upgrade that evolved much later, and it's primarily seen in highly social species. Humans, chimpanzees, bonobos, baboons.
Right.
The core function is to synchronize group behavior.
Like the ostriches mentioned in the observational data?
Yes. The ostriches are a perfect example.
Right. Because they will contagiously yawn across the whole flock just to ensure that hundreds of birds all settle down to rest at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Or they'll all wake up and become alert at the exact same time. It's a synchronization tool.
Exactly. And to pull off that synchronization, The mammalian brain relies on something called the mirror neuron system.
Oh, right, mirror neurons. Basically, the monkey do cells.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Like, if I watch someone accidentally slice their finger with a knife, I'll physically wince, right?
Oh.
Because my mirror neurons are firing as if I just cut my own finger.
Exactly.
They're the biological hardware for empathy.
And functional MRI scans show that when you watch a video of someone yawning, a very specific part of your brain's mirror neuron network lights up.
Which part?
It's called Brodmann's Area 9, located in the right inferior frontal gyrus.
Okay, quite the name.
Yeah, but what's important is that this area is intimately linked to motor empathy and what psychologists call theory of mind.
Theory of mind.
Which is the ability to understand and internalize the internal states, intentions, and emotions of the people around you.
So catching a yawn from across the room is basically a subconscious neurological empathy test.
It really is.
My brain is seeing your brain cool down, and it's mirroring that action to stay emotionally and physically in sync with you.
Yes. This involuntary mimicry is our brain's ancient way of bonding. And there is a massive amount of data supporting this. It's known as the emotional bias hypothesis.
Emotional bias.
Yeah. We are exponentially more likely to catch a yawn from someone we deeply care about, like a partner, a family member, a close friend, than from a complete stranger.
That makes a lot of sense. And the auditory yawn study is the perfect proof of this.
Oh, totally.
This wasn't just a quick lab test.
Yeah.
Researchers meticulously tracked 294 vocalized yawns over the course of 9 straight years.
And the crucial methodology of this study was that the observers couldn't even see the person yawning.
Right. They could only hear the distinct audio cue of the yawn from another room or from behind them.
Which completely eliminates the argument that contagious yawning is just about visual attention.
Exactly. You don't have to see a face to catch it. The study proved that the contagion is heavily biased by emotional bonds.
Right.
Like, if you were sitting in a room and heard your best friend yawn behind you, it triggered your own yawn reflex far more frequently than if you heard a mere acquaintance or a stranger make the exact same sound.
It beautifully proves that the reflex is filtered through your emotional attachment to the yawner.
It's so cool.
And looking at when this contagion is absent is just as revealing. For instance, developmental psychology shows us that children under the age of 4 generally do not catch yawns at all.
Because children under 4 haven't fully developed that theory of mind yet.
Exactly.
They haven't installed the software that allows them to process that other people have internal states different from their own.
Right. The empathy networks just aren't fully online yet. And we see a similar phenomenon in pathology. Well, populations with impaired empathy or atypical social processing, such as individuals with autism spectrum disorder or schizophrenia, they show significantly reduced rates of contagious yawning.
Because their mirror neuron systems and empathy networks are simply processing those social cues differently.
Exactly.
You know, I am totally sold on the empathy theory. It makes perfect evolutionary sense why I would yawn when my partner yawns. It even explains why I might catch a yawn from my dog, because we share a deep cross-species emotional bond. But this does not explain the interspecies glitch.
Ah, yes, the mechanical Turk study.
Yes. This completely broke my brain when I read it.
It's a weird one.
Researchers gathered nearly 300 human participants and had them watch video compilations of yawns. But they weren't watching humans or even cute dogs.
No, they were watching videos of yawning fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds.
A fish yawning is a very strange visual, by the way.
That looks ridiculous.
But the participants caught yawns from all of them, even the frogs and the fish. And if contagious yawning is strictly an empathy response based on phylogenetic closeness, meaning, how close we are in the evolutionary family tree, we absolutely should not be catching yawns from an amphibian on a computer screen.
Right, because you don't have deep mirror neuron empathy for a frog.
I really don't.
And when the researchers dug into the data, they found that evolutionary closeness didn't matter at all in this specific context.
Really? Then what did?
The single biggest predictor for whether a human participant caught a yawn from a fish or a reptile was simply how incredibly tired the human was at the time of the experiment.
Okay, wait. So if I'm already exhausted, my brain is already running hot.
Right.
My internal thermostat is primed to trigger a yawn anyway.
Right.
So seeing literally anything open its mouth wide is enough to kickstart my body's AC unit.
Exactly.
But how does yawning at a fish fit in with the whole group synchronization idea we just talked about?
It fits perfectly when you introduce the vigilance theory.
Okay, what's that?
Think about what a yawn represents in the wild. If an individual in your group yawns, it signals that their arousal and vigilance are dropping.
They're getting sleepy.
Right. They're getting sleepy, their processor is overheating, and their guard is down.
Which is incredibly dangerous if you live in a world filled with predators.
Exactly. So contagious yawning might have evolved as an automatic alarm bell. It's a compensatory mechanism.
Oh, wow. It's like an evolutionary neighborhood watch program.
Yes. That's a phenomenal way to explain it.
If one guard on the perimeter yawns, they are broadcasting to the group, hey, my brain is sluggish, I'm losing focus.
Huh.
So the brains of the other guards see that, and they automatically trigger their own yawns.
Right.
They do it to flush their cerebrospinal fluid, cool their own brains, and artificially boost their own vigilance to protect the group because they know one of their members is failing.
You are compensating for the vulnerability of the yawner. And there's a highly clever eye-tracking study, the snake and frog study, that provides hard data for this vigilance boost.
Oh, the methodology here is so cool. Researchers had human participants watch videos of other people yawning.
Yep.
And immediately after the video, the participants were given a visual search task on a screen. They had to quickly scan a chaotic image and locate hidden pictures of snakes, which represent, an ancient evolutionary thread,
Yeah.
and hidden pictures of frogs, which represent a harmless neutral stimulus.
And what the eye-tracking software revealed is that after seeing someone yawn, the participants were able to locate the hidden snakes significantly faster than the frogs.
Seeing the yawn actually upgraded their brain's threat detection software.
Yes. The yawn was a cue that the group's collective awareness was dropping, so the observer's individual awareness spiked to compensate. They became hyper-vigilant to threats.
So if we put all these pieces together, contagious yawning isn't just one simple thing.
Not at all.
It's a layered, multifaceted tool.
Uh-huh.
At its absolute base layer, it's a primal physiological survival reflex to cool a hot mammalian brain and shift arousal. And because that base trigger is so primal, broad visual stimuli like even a yawning fish can kickstart it if you're already tired.
Right.
But over millions of years, as we evolved into highly social creatures, evolution basically layered empathy on top of it. It hijacked the AC unit and turned it into a sophisticated tool to keep our closest social groups emotionally synced and highly vigilant against threats.
It's just a beautifully complex biological symphony disguised as this mundane moment of boredom.
Totally. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The next time you feel that deep, uncontrollable urge to stretch your jaw and suck in a massive breath of air, remember, you are not suffocating.
Right. You are not just trying to get oxygen.
Your brain is acting as its own radiator. It is executing a highly calibrated thermal regulation event, forcing a state transition to jolt you from daydreaming back into paying attention.
And hey, the length of that yawn is quite literally a measurement of the sheer density and complexity of your cortical neurons.
And when you catch a yawn from your partner or your best friend across the room, you are displaying a profound subconscious level of empathy.
You really are.
You are actively participating in an ancient evolutionary chain reaction designed to bond your community together and keep the people you love vigilant against the snakes in the grass.
It's a reflex that connects you to millions of years of social survival.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to chew on today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We live in a modern society that constantly tells us to cover our mouths, to stifle our yawns, and to suppress this reflex entirely in the name of being polite. Right.
Definitely. It's considered very rude to yawn in front of others.
But if contagious yawning evolved specifically to synchronize our empathy and to keep our communities emotionally connected and highly alert,
Yeah.
could constantly suppressing our yawns in polite society actually be making us less empathetic and more socially isolated?
Wow. That is a fascinating question to end on.
We'll let you ponder that one. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.